Hello, you absolute twats, and welcome to the first episode of the Blistering Pace Podcast. I'm your host, Jess _. Joining me is my co-host, Purple _ Foundation, and Retro of Retromeister Productions.
Yes.
Now, our first topic of conversation today. Does anybody remember a certain twat by the name of Karl Jobst? Well, if you look back just over a year ago now, actually, he quite famously lost a lawsuit against Billy Mitchell, a lawsuit that many people thought was impossible that he would ever lose. As intentionally or not, they had been misled into believing that the lawsuit was about Billy Mitchell cheating. Well, it just came out recently that apparently Karl Jobst is now trying to sue Billy Mitchell for defamation. So, gents, what are your thoughts on this so far? Have you read up on it? What's the crack?
Not really. I saw like one tweet about it. I mean, Billy Mitchell says shit all the time. I wouldn't be surprised if something technically classes as defamation.
Well, I at least bothered to click on the article, and based on what I've read, the main points that Jobst has against Billy Mitchell is apparently Billy Mitchell is the one responsible for people believing that Karl Jobst misled people about what the lawsuit was about, and for donating to his GoFundMe, and also for using his likeness to sell bottles of hot sauce, because he came out with this special limited edition Karl Lost hot sauce. So
Wait, say that last bit again about the hot sauce. That's a part of the case you're saying?
Yeah, so Billy Mitchell was going on this spree. I mean, for ages he was using this discount code for his hot sauce, with Karl Lost, for 10% off. He came out with like this limited edition bottle with Karl Jobst's face on it. He was also selling like signed pictures, I think, that were a picture of Karl Jobst as a lobster. So one of the points in the lawsuit is that he was using Karl Jobst's likeness to sell product.
Sounds like a little bit of a stretch.
Yeah, well, I don't know what's that got to do with defamation, though, right? It's a totally separate thing. Maybe there's multiple things he's being sued for. I don't know. This has all just come out like yesterday or something, so we haven't had a chance to look over it. No one's really had a chance to research it. I haven't researched it. So it's like, part of me wants to say, like, you know, we shouldn't even be talking about this because but it's like, however, you know, on the other hand, so if we look at the initial the previous defamation case, which was Billy was the plaintiff and he won, and that case was in Australia. So first and foremost, just on the basic legal level, in Australia, it's significantly easier to win a defamation case than it is in the US. And I believe this one's in Florida, because I think Billy Mitchell was in Florida. So just the basic bar of winning a defamation case is higher in Florida and in the US than it is in Australia. So just based on that, Karl is already in kind of a worse position than Billy was in terms of trying to win. Secondly, I feel that we know that with the first case, the only thing I can really say, like, going forward, because again, this is probably a thing that would take like years, right? This is at the start of it. It probably won't go to trial as well. So there's another thing you have to understand. The last one went to trial, right? That's rare. Like there's literally something like 90+% of the time of defamation cases. You can look up the statistics on it. Vast majority of defamation cases don't go to trial. They get settled out of court first.
I mean, yeah, even thinking to all the other lawsuits that Billy Mitchell started himself, like how many of them actually went to trial? I think one with Twin Galaxies, and all the others were settled out. They were either dropped or settled out of court, I think.
So I don't know, this is just totally off the top of my head, but this is the type of thing I think might be going on. So we know that a lot of the time, if you sue someone, it's more about just putting the financial and lifestyle like pressure, like just putting the pressure on the person's life, just on their life, that they have to now sit around and like be mentally burdened by this case for years, and they have to spend money on lawyers and all this shit, right? So basically, a lot of the time, like this is Billy Mitchell's tactic. Billy Mitchell has sued many people, not expecting it's ever going to go to court and there's going to be a final verdict from a judge. No, he wants to put the pressure on your life. He wants to put financial pressure on you. He knows that 98% or whatever of defamation cases don't go to trial anyway, and he ends up getting a settlement out of court. And in the settlement out of court, he'll at least gain some compromise, right? So that's usually what the strategy is. Now, if you pay attention, so again, it was an anomaly that last one did go to court in the first place, right? So that probably won't happen this time. So a lot of people might be expecting that this is going to go to trial and there's going to be the judge is going to slam down the gavel and give some verdict like with last time. Probably not going to happen. It's probably going to be settled out of court. Now, if you pay attention to what's going on, well, if you actually pay attention, even though Billy Mitchell won that case, I'm pretty sure, at least according to Karl, and he seemed to have the receipts to back it up, is that Billy Mitchell ultimately lost money from the case, right? Because, yeah, Karl was technically awarded all this money, but in how it works in practice, Billy was technically, awarded all this money from Karl, but how it works in practice, you do some financial trickery with your assets. Karl got this good deal where like he declares bankruptcy. He gets the house in his wife's name, who gets to buy it. Basically they do all this financial mumbo jumbo. And ultimately, it's not like Billy just actually gets awarded all that money. Like, Karl Jobst is declared bankrupt, so he can't pay it to him anyway, and the debt is wiped. And ultimately, Billy Mitchell has lost money, right? So Billy Mitchell's finances may not be in good shape. Like Billy Mitchell has been spending years fighting these legal wars, losing money. Even when he wins, he still loses money, right? So Karl Jobst, his channel's still doing well. He's still making good income probably and all that. He seems to have survived pretty well financially. So he might be now flipping Billy's strategy back on him. He might have sensed weakness. He probably knows a bit about Billy's financials. At least he's said that in the past, that like his according to him, like Billy's finances aren't looking too great, or they've been burnt down a lot. So he may be sensing weakness and saying Billy is now like worn out, even though he won that last case. It's already worn him down. It's worn down his finances. It's worn down his mental state, because how many years now has Billy just been sitting in legal cases? So this might be the time to flip the same tactic on him. Does he have the stamina and the money to survive another 5-year lawsuit, whilst my channel's popping off and his business is probably dying, and he has to sit here and sell his crappy hot sauce, and he has to rely on like dumb gimmicks, like putting Karl's face on the hot sauce like you're on about. Okay, great. I don't know how well his business is doing, but probably not as good as Karl's YouTube. So this may be like a war of attrition, and he's going to get some out of court settlement that, even if he may not even be expected for it to go to court, and that he's actually going to win the case in court. That's what I'm saying. He knows he doesn't have a great case maybe, but he knows he can continue to wear down Billy, and he knows that he can financially drain him, and that he actually has him where he wants him, and he can flip the same tactic on Billy that Billy's been doing on everyone else and get some compromise settlement. And if he just gets that, that's enough to I think it's more of an ego thing for him. I don't think Karl cares about money or anything for this. He wants to salvage his reputation. He can't bear the fact that he's lost, that he's ultimately ended the Billy saga on a loss. He needs to get some form of W back to save face. So I think it's most like a face saving thing, stuff like that.
I definitely agree with that last point, that it's definitely to do with his ego, and that Karl just can't bear the fact that after all that he went through, all those many videos he made clowning on silly Mitchell, as he called him, that it ended up in the most humiliating fashion possible for him. I mean, so with Billy Mitchell's other lawsuits, would you say that they were mostly just an intimidation tactic to get people to not speak up about his Donkey Kong scores, or to silence people who were already talking about them? It was more of an intimidation strategy rather than doing it for a financial incentive?
No, I don't see how it was a financial incentive, because Like this is not like, okay, yeah, like if some quadrillionaire celebrity like defames you or something, that's like the best thing that's ever happened to you, because now you can sue them and probably get millions from them. Right? But like none of these people involved have got that much money, right? Like some of these people involved, the richest amongst them are like maybe low millionaires, right? And they'll blast through so much money just on the case and everything. It's like there isn't enough money in this, in any of the people involved. Like Billy is out there. He likes to put his financial leverage on people. He likes to bully these people with lawsuits, basically, because he knows that in the legal system, the way it works is, like I say earlier, it's about putting pressure and getting an out of court settlement that at least gives you some compromise. Even you're probably not going to get everything you want, but you'll get some compromise. And you say, oh, look, I won this or whatever. And then you can spin it as like, oh, I won the case or something, And so like, that's always been what it's been about. There isn't enough money in these, like, who is the richest person out of all these people who are even involved in anything to do with this? You can't.
Job's wife at this point, probably.
Like, if a judge awards you $100 million worth of damages from, Walter Day, who's got like $10 in his bank account, just because the judge has ordered that, like I say, well, Walter Day would just like declare bankruptcy, and it's like, okay, debt's wiped, you can pay him $10, and so that's like what happened with the Karl thing. Like I say, Karl didn't have to pay him anywhere near the full amount because he doesn't even have that amount of money. Or if he does. Actually,
that reminds me, it was another point in like Karl's current case against Billy Mitchell. There were three things that I can remember reading. One was the using his likeness. Another was about the claiming that Karl misled people to donate to his GoFundMe. And another was apparently Billy was spreading a lie that he'd like engaged in illegal activity to get out of paying off his debts to him, basically. Those were the three things. But I think on the second point I said very especially, like, that there's no way that will stand a chance in like actually holding up in court. So it's like, I remember the moment the verdict came out, there was immediate uproar against Karl Jobst for misleading people. So I seem to remember, like, me and you, Retro, we were a couple of the only people that I knew that actually like knew what the case was actually about, and had been saying like months before the verdict that like it was an obvious loss for Karl. We hadn't understood why he'd backed down yet. So I don't think that trying to claim that Billy Mitchell was responsible for making people believe that Karl misled people is going to hold up at all, at least on that point. The other two things I don't know about. All I've heard is that defamation is apparently much harder to be successful in suing for in America. I don't know why. Maybe a lot of it's protected under free speech. I've no idea.
Well, if you want to know what was going on psychologically in the previous lawsuit, because like I say, so this has come up again, which in this new lawsuit, which is the fact that all of these people, the millions of Karl Jobst viewers, they thought that the lawsuit was basically boiled down to, was going to be decided of who would win based on the evidence of whether Billy Mitchell cheated or not, right? And that was a big misconception that all these people had, and that most people felt they were misled by Karl, right? And they were like, wait, what? So like after he lost, everyone, all of his audience is like, wait, what? So it wasn't about that, right? It was about something else. And then, now that's apparently coming up again in this new lawsuit, because now Karl is saying that this bad perception of him was caused by Billy, and he's now suing Billy for that. So that's what's happening, right?
Yeah, it's total bollocks. I mean,
it's like, so in that initial case of the previous suit, where all of the audience thought that, right? There's the psychological phenomenon that was going on there. That is something that's called agenda setting theory. Basically, I would say this is an example of agenda setting theory, which is a term you could Google. Basically, what that means is agenda setting theory is basically it's like a theory in like media studies, like information theory, media studies. Basically, like how you can totally manipulate the perception by just what is omitted and what is mentioned over and over again, right? It's like a media bias type thing. So, for example, the reason why everyone thought that is because when you went onto Karl Jobst's channel, which he's the big name with a big audience making the video. So all the people who already knew about this, they knew about it from Karl Jobst. They're watching his videos. And what was the agenda that was set, just by repetition on Karl Jobst's channel is what? It's 10 billion videos about Billy cheated this, almost new evidence. This one proves it for sure that Billy was cheating, or the red joystick and the 4-way joystick and the swap, what was it? Like the board swap video.
I mean, that went back a long time. Even Apollo Legend was talking about that.
Yeah. So it's like, he was making so many videos. It's like, if you turn on the news, right? And every day it's like something to do with Iran, let's say, if we're talking about recent times, which obviously is a big issue. I'm not saying it isn't. Like, it may not be the best example, but it's like, there's certain eras where, like most people, like if they just hearing about Iran, let's say, it's just coming up. It comes up on the TV. They're on the train and they hear some other guy talking about it. Just because it's like the thing that everyone's talking about, they now, so even if they don't know about the topic, they at least now subconsciously know that this is like an important topic, or this is an important issue or something. Whereas like any things that are just not being mentioned, that are just being omitted, even if they're actually just as big issues, they just don't know about it. It's not in their headspace. The agenda hasn't been set for them to even think about those issues. So they just implicitly assume that any of those issues are unimportant. And they implicitly assume that the thing that is being repeated, that the agenda is being set for, is important, which probably does have like a correlation with what is, But like, point is, because you go on Karl's channel and everything you see is like something to do with Billy cheated. This piece of evidence about Billy cheating, that piece of evidence about Billy cheating. Somebody said this about Billy cheating. Well, the agenda, and just by repetition, that Karl never actually lied directly. Karl never directly lied about it and said like, by the way, guys, so I'm in this lawsuit with Billy Mitchell. It's all about the cheating. Like he never. It's not like Karl ever lied.
Yeah.
It's just that because all of his videos were just about that, right? Everyone just assumed that everything to Billy was just that. They just fill in the gaps in their head. They assume that's the important thing. This agenda set in theory. That's what that is.
I mean, yeah. Like thinking back to it, I was thinking like, what is the reason that I actually knew what the lawsuit was about to begin with? And it wasn't from a Karl Jobst video. It wasn't from anything Karl Jobst said. It was because I watched a video that Billy Mitchell made saying what Karl had said and why he was suing him. And I thought at the time, yeah, actually, Billy has a good point here. Karl's in trouble. But, Billy Mitchell brought on so many lawsuits and Karl seemed to be intent on covering all of them. It just became very confusing to follow what was related to what. And as you say, like the vast majority of his videos were about Billy cheating and proving Billy cheated and like the mortgage broker's red joystick nonsense. And it was barely ever mentioned by Karl. I think he only ever mentioned once.
He mentioned it once, like when it had basically just started, which I do remember watching that, but then I completely forgot about it, and then I thought that the lawsuit was about cheating.
It was a video I remember because he was using footage from NERG, Northeast Retro Gaming, which is, was up my neck of woods when I lived there, and I was like, what the bloody hell's Billy Mitchell doing in Northeast? So I remembered it specifically, and in that video he said something like, he basically said, Apollo Legend is related to my ongoing lawsuit, so I'm not going to speak much about it, because Billy was addressing that in a question asked at this like retro gaming event. That was the only time I can remember Karl addressing that in one of his dozens and dozens of videos. So like I could see why people would have missed it, because by that point it was like, people are getting sick to death of hearing about Billy Mitchell.
All right, well, I guess the close is, if firstly, I don't expect it's going to go to trial. Expect it's probably going to be, we don't know. Expect it's going to be some form of compromise settlement. It probably is Karl Jobst suspecting that Billy is like on the back foot and that he's worn down from all these other lawsuits financially and everything. And so we can get some settlement out of him, or just get like a PR win and be able to say, look, I didn't end on a loss, I ended on a W with Billy, right? And it's going to be something like that. If you do want to know what's going on with the case, then you need to like read the original source documents as much as possible. You don't want to be listening to like whatever some YouTube pundit, idiot has to say, for the most part, because they're just talking cap. So you just need to like go to the original documents and use your own brain to be able to understand it for the most part. If you care about following this, like if there's any lessons to learn from the last case, right, that's what you need to do. So that, I don't really have any prediction for how it's going to turn out, other than I would assume it's not going to go to trial and it's going to be some compromise and Karl Jobst will save face and claim victory.
Yeah, well, I agree with you that it's just an ego thing for Karl. I personally don't see this going anywhere because I don't think Karl really has a case. The main reason being, for a successful defamation case, you need to like prove damages, and if you like take one look at Karl Jobst's YouTube page, he's doing just fine. Like, he might have lost some subscribers at the time, arguably because of his own coverage of the lawsuits and that people were misled by him, intentionally or not.
Okay, well, if we want to comment on that, like, one other point there is, in terms of proving the damages, Karl Jobst, the whole Billy Mitchell saga was not really... It wasn't a damage to Karl Jobst. He built his channel off of it. Yeah. Like, okay, so how much ad revenue... Like this, I don't know, I'm not a lawyer, but like if I was Billy and his lawyers or whatever, I'd say, okay, give us the statistics. How many millions... I don't think he's actually made millions, but like how much... Well, I don't really know how much he's made. If you count all the money that he's made from all of his Billy Mitchell videos and all the sponsorships on those videos and everything else, and how much he's overall grew his channel, then I wouldn't be surprised if he's made numbers approaching millions or within the millions.
Yeah,
at least
undoubtedly.
A lot. In terms of the overall effect on his channel, growing the channel, all the ad revenue and the sponsorship money on all those videos, right? It's like, well, how much have you gained financially? Like, show us the analytics. Like, how much have you made just from these videos, right? It's like,
there's literally no way that anything Billy Mitchell has said or done after winning his lawsuit has hurt Karl more than Karl gained from Billy Mitchell in the first place. There's no way that's possible.
He milked everything he could out of Billy Mitchell. Like, he pumped out as many slop videos about Billy Mitchell that he could with some new, like, completely overblown nonsense. Like, Billy Mitchell was just a cow that he milked for money for years. So, yeah, in terms of that proving the damages, I mean, he can obviously probably, I don't really know, I've not been paying attention. If he's been losing subs, he could point to that. But again, subs don't really... Like, anyone who's into YouTube knows that the sub count is basically irrelevant anyway.
I mean, Karl's still pulling like hundreds of thousands, sometimes over 1 million on his new vids.
I feel like any losses would just be directly caused by himself, because at the end of the day, he like fairly lost the trial.
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah. I don't know. Again, like, I'm not a lawyer. I don't know how much the result of that other trial overlaps into this trial. If the judge in this trial takes into account the fact that, wait a minute, this guy just lost this other trial in this other country. I don't know how that works, but that is weird as well.
So the only thing I could say in favour of Karl is immediately after the trial, even for like maybe 2 or 3 months after the trial, Billy was being like a massive knobhead on Twitter in what he described as a generational Twitter run. Some of it was funny, some of it probably crossed the line at times, but if you ask me, it's like he'd been bottling this up for years after all the shite that Karl had been spreading about him. So
fuck off. I don't agree with that.
No.
Billy Mitchell, right? I'll actually say this though. If you want to get my personal opinion, I've said stuff pro and positive Billy in the past, also kind of, or at least like anti Karl Jobst, because I do think, and I did state this on the last lawsuit when I covered it, like, I do think that Karl did deserve his comeuppance because he got way too cocky with Billy, and he needed to be humbled with that, and he wasn't, there were these issues going on. You can debate of how intentional it was, but there were these type of issues of him misleading the audience, right, and stuff like that. And I felt like he wouldn't admit he didn't want to admit that he did anything wrong. And like the whole original, comment that he made about Apollo Legend that got him done in the last lawsuit, that was a big mistake that he made that he shouldn't have made, etc.
I mean, hold on, I do want to add as well, I don't think many people know that, like, the source of the claim that Billy Mitchell made Apollo Legend pay him a load of money. I don't know how many people know that the source of that was this Ersatz Katz guy, who is like the most deranged Billy Mitchell hater known to man, that has pages and pages and pages of website just trash talking Billy Mitchell and like looking into every single facet of his life and career.
That is also true. Like, yeah, so like Karl was getting information, he was getting like intelligence passed to him about Billy from this guy.
This guy as well, who flew to Australia to show up to the trial in person and was writing up about it on his blog every single day.
Which, by the way, that was good that he did. Like, but I support that guy in his work. Like, he did do good work, going to the trial and report, because he knew that the trial wasn't going to be televised or anything, right? So if anyone was going to document this trial, somebody would have to go who cared enough to do write-ups on it. So, I ultimately like that guy, or at least I appreciate his work. And his work that he's done on Billy and everything, documenting everything about Billy. Like, if you want to go and see all the esoteric stuff going back to the 90s, like every piece of information about Billy, you go to this guy's site. He's done it all. So like, I appreciate this guy and his work. The problem is, though, this Ersatz Katz guy, the guy who was feeding this intelligence to Karl, basically. But the problem with this guy is he also clearly does, at the same time, that he has good information and all that. He's doing good work, but he does have like a big hate boner for Billy that clouds his judgment as well. So when he was writing about the trial, he did like a write up every day of the trial, like day 1, day 2, day 3. He was writing. I was reading them at the time, but like he was saying by the end, he was like, "Oh guys, I think Karl's won." Like, he admitted as well that Karl made some mistakes. Karl's team made mistakes, but you could see that kind of showed as well how his bias is, and the fact that he was like predicting as if Karl was going to win, when to me it was pretty clear that he wasn't. Even though I was reading his account, I was like, okay, this guy's kind of delusional. That's what I thought. So
that's my issue with his whole guy's website. Basically, I agree with what you say. Like, it's good work that he did. He went to the trial, he documented it. I just don't like that it's all been documented through the lens of someone who hates Billy Mitchell more than possibly anyone else on the planet.
Yeah, so it's clouding. You're getting good stuff on there, but you are getting a biased account. So if you had listened to him, you would have thought that, but at the end of that case, which he was there and he watched all of it in person, and if you listened to him, you would have thought that Karl was going to win the case, but he didn't. So just that shows you, like, I mean, not that he claimed to be omniscient about it, but that is one element. Yeah, that Karl had this guy feeding him information, feeding him like false intelligence or whatever. But
well, we've been lingering on this topic for a while. If anyone else wants to add anything before we move on, do so now.
I don't like Billy Mitchell.
Oh, okay. I did want to make a final point, because I think you interrupted me when I was about to make this point.
Go ahead.
Which is that so I've had a phase of kind of going a bit against Karl and saying he needs to be humbled and stuff like that. And I honestly did hope that this whole Billy Mitchell saga was done at this point, because it's been going on so long. I'm just kind of sick of hearing about it on the one hand. But on the other hand, it's almost become like a comfortable staple. It like how in the UK we had the Queen, who was kind of viewed as this staple because she was so old, and like she'd been there for like the entire lifetime of a civilization, or like an entire century. So it was just like a symbol of stability. So it's almost like this Karl Jobst and Billy Mitchell thing has become like a comfortable like staple of like the speedrun history or something. It just has always got. I even know there's something like comfy about it, in a certain weird way to me. I don't really know how to describe that, but I'm kind of more on I'm going to take Karl's side on this one. If I'm going to say where my personal biases are at, I'm going to take Karl's side. Like, at the end of the day, yeah, Billy Mitchell, I was somewhat supporting him before. I was somewhat supporting him to like give Karl his comeuppance. But okay, he's got that win, so I'm no longer as sympathetic to him now. I still would ultimately say that he is, he is a cunt basically, like Billy Mitchell. Like, he is a guy who he did cheat at the game, first and foremost. He is a cheater. He is dishonest. He is, most things that Karl Jobst has ever said about him have been 100% true. He is a dishonest, lying, cheating, grifting scumbag, and I hope that Karl Jobst can milk him and take down, bankrupt him for good. So that's where I'm at. I ultimately do. If you want to see where ultimately, like after all the dust has settled, forget all the individual battles, who do I want to see win the overall war? I would still say Karl.
Well, I'm in agreement. I think they're both twats. Who I think is the bigger twat, I don't really know. I feel like, I don't know if many people will be with me on this, but I really enjoy seeing Billy Mitchell as like a villain. I think he plays the role very well, and it's very entertaining, even if he is a massive knobhead. So I don't know.
The only problem is he is an actual villain though, but not really in like a cool badass way. Maybe he's kind of like, he does remind me in many ways of Trump. Because like Trump came onto the scene, and obviously he's almost trying to be like a mini Trump. Obviously, he is the type of guy who he's almost like modeling himself on Trump partially, right? But point is, Trump comes about, and at first he's like new and cool, and he's got this aura to him, and he's doing these funny talking points that are like new and cool at first. But now you look at Trump, and he's like, he's some old boomer, out of touch grifter. Ultimately just a total scumbag. Like, he is a grifter. He is just there to grift and boost his own ego. He doesn't care about anything else. Any aura that he had, no, he's just a boomer who's just here to like, grift and try to boost your own image because you have a massive ego and it's played out and it's not cool or funny anymore. There's no aura to it. That's how I feel about Billy Mitchell as well. Like, okay, you were kind of cool at first with your little WWE gimmick, but I'm sick of you now. You are a grifting scumbag. You're not funny. Your tweets aren't funny. They were funny at first a bit, and then you massively played it out and like massively like, made it your mission to drag it to the point where any form of funniness or anything out of it was completely milked away. So Billy Mitchell.
I don't even know who's in control of Billy Mitchell's Twitter account. Like, I'm pretty sure. Like, I've been to plenty of his live streams. I think like his son is in charge of the chat or whatever. He seems he comes off as a bit like technologically illiterate to me. So if he doesn't know how to even post a tweet, I won't really be very surprised. Like, if you ever watch any of his hot sauce like TikTok videos he makes, he's got this like redneck hillbilly in all of them, which could be his son. I don't know. But like it's clearly being edited in such a way that like Billy Mitchell, like I don't know what kind of input he's having other than just being there and thinking, oh, this will get views, this will be good for the business. I think that was sort of his main focus, really, after winning the lawsuit, is how much hot sauce can I sell off the back of this?
Yeah, again, like, everything is a grift for these people. He's one of these American grifter types. It's like a certain type of American. It's like Donald Trump is the ultimate example of it, but he's just another, like, derivative. His first, like,
Lex
everything's just
another one.
Buy my crappy hot sauce with like this PNG image of Karl, and it says Karl lost.
It was like I think it was like AI generated image of Karl crying.
Like, I don't like these type of people. I actually despise this type of person. Like Billy Mitchell, and maybe before I would have given him more credence. My hatred has grown more deep. My patience has grown more and more thin with this type of person. Billy Mitchell, even though I've somewhat supported him in some things in the past, because, I've kind of gone, like, because I have a nuanced opinion on these things, and like, my opinion changes over time as different things happen, and I have a nuanced opinion that takes into account both sides, so I can criticize both sides. But if you want my ultimate conclusion, who has a better moral character? Billy Mitchell, definitely Karl Jobst. Karl Jobst has a much better moral character.
Yeah, but that's a good point, to be fair.
Billy Mitchell is an archetype of American grifter who has a massive ego. If he claims that anything that he's doing is for any form of higher principle, is complete cap. It's just for his own ego.
Yeah, I mean, as I said earlier, I find him entertaining, and I think that's a trap that a lot of people fall into. is if you find somebody entertaining, you're kind of willing to look past a lot of like the dodgy business that they've been involved with.
Yeah, fuck that, because that's like what everyone does with Trump. You know, like ignore the fact that he's just like a total con artist who's like run 5 billion scams throughout the course of his career. You know, just because he's like kind of funny, I guess, if you're like a boomer. It's like, no. Like Billy Mitchell, he isn't funny. He might have been funny a bit at first, but he's probably only funny to you now if you're like 70 years old like he is. He's not funny. His stupid tie is, you know, like whatever. Like King of Kong was 20 years ago. That was kind of good for the time. But okay, he's just riding off the coattails of that. You know, he can fuck off. I hate his archetype. I hate his whole grifter archetype. Everything about him, he can fuck off.
He's also definitely not 6'6".
Yeah, I mean, look, with that said, he's also getting older, so maybe at his peak he was.
Right? He definitely wasn't.
1'3". Have you seen like the pictures that he takes where he's like clearly standing on like a shoebox and stuff like that, and he's still usually not the tallest person?
I mean, Billy Mitchell is tall, but he's just not 6'6". But yes, I have seen them clips of him stood on like a tin of paint.
But it's like another way how he reminds me of Trump is like, to what, like, if Trump ever does anything funny or cool or whatever, you know, is it really him, or is it just he's leached off of like some 4chan meme that was made by some 18-year-old? So it's the same thing with Billy Mitchell. Most of the stuff that he does or says that are funny is like, it's not even him. It's just his son, maybe. I don't even know it's him. Some kid who's run his account, or is like, you know, some meme that some other guy has posted that he's then just taken that, right? It's like he's not funny himself. He's just, you know, taking stuff from other people. Even on the things where he is funny or whatever. So it's like, I don't know.
Right, well,
I never thought to compare fucking Billy Mitchell and Donald Trump, but it kind of like low-key works. I think, well, it's hard not to side with Karl Jobst just because Billy Mitchell is just so fucking awful. Like just wanting him to win this, like, well, or at least like, I don't know, guess some type of revenge on him. I don't know, because like Karl fucked up like really bad, and I don't know if it was intentional or not, but either way, like, I mean, even outside of that, I just wish he would make more content. Well, I guess he had to file for bankruptcy, so maybe that's why, but he still makes like 90% of his videos are still like cheating videos, and it's like, all right, man, just do something original for once, please, and thank you. But like at the end of the day, he is not Billy Mitchell. He'll never be Billy Mitchell, so therefore it's like when it's one guy versus another guy, especially when someone, like, normally you could just like easily ignore them both, but like when it's Billy motherfucking Mitchell, like he goes up against basically anybody. I just kind of just want him to lose.
I'm curious, actually, Purple, like how like invested in you, like in the original lawsuit were you? Because I know like me and Retro knew out of the gate what it was about, but like were you one of the people that thought it was about the cheating situation?
Yeah, they 100% thought that's what it was, and because I got all of my information from those Billy Mitchell videos that Karl was making like during the trial. So
you never saw the video that Billy made himself?
No, I never, because it's Billy Mitchell, I just assumed he'd just say a bunch of fucking BS.
And then it wasn't until like after the trial, like after the verdict, that you found out, like along with so many other people.
Correct.
Yeah, I mean, that was my main point. I've already discussed it, but I don't think Billy had any part in like,
I don't think
people into thinking that Karl misled people. I think Karl brought that all upon himself. Anyway, should move on to the next topic, which is the ongoing Super Mario Bros. 1 drama. So, do you two know much about what's going on there?
Yeah, I mean, I know a little bit. I did watch Niftski's video, and then I forgot half of it, but that's okay. Just a lot of stuff, mainly like a lot of shit talking against Niftski, but like the big thing is Averge. I don't even know how you say his name, but he's the world record holder, and so automatically Niftski is like his competition. The mods had a vote to like for whether they should ban input swapping, because Niftski like plays on emulator, but he still occasionally plays like on a controller. It's kind of weird, like, because I don't know like what the specific purpose for that is. But the mods were like majorly in favor of not banning that, and then Averge like joins the mod team, and then all of a sudden they're all majorly in favor of banning it, and it's just really obvious that something happened there. There's also like screenshots and stuff of him like DMing people, being like, vote on this, vote to ban it, you know, stuff like that. There's also some talks of like doxing and stuff. I don't read like the entire thing because it's quite long. But when Average got like exposed, his initial response was really, really bad, and he did not say the word sorry a single time. And then he made a second response where he did apologize, but he's still linking like other people's docs trying to like expose Niftski, and it's just to a point where it's like, even if there's potentially some valid points in there, like he's just dug his grave like way too deep. It's just over for him.
I think regarding this situation, that there's kind of two conversations to be had, really. There's the conversation about Averge's behaviour and basically just how it's completely out of order and proper scummy. And then there's a conversation about the actual technique in question that's been banned, I think. But I will preface everything by saying, I don't know for certain, but I went and looked at the Mario Brothers record after this. There's no way Averge is older than like 15 or 16, and Niftski is probably like 17 or 18 at most. So this is basically just drama between a couple of children. Or maybe, well, you know what I mean. They're not very old. When I was that age, I was still being, you know, a massive knobhead online. But because Super Mario Brothers, especially at top level, is as popular as it is, this has just become this huge public spectacle where like this like 15, 16-year-old kid is just getting clowned on by everybody because, well, he's just not well adjusted, I guess.
I looked it up, and Niftski's 20. I don't know how old Averge is.
Niftski's 20, okay, well. Maybe we should start with a discussion about the technique itself. So I know you said that you didn't really understand what the issue is, or what the deal is with switching to a controller. I don't fully, but I do have a basic understanding that sort of Mario Brothers 1 at this point, or I guess for a while now, is like the runs are just that close to the TAS, but they're basically just trying to replicate TAS inputs for most of the levels. And Niftski is trying to just tie the TAS, basically, which, and the TAS hasn't been improved for like 10, 15 years or something, so as far as we know, it's just the best time you can possibly get. And there's one specific level where using a controller is easier to get the TAS inputs or something.
Oh yeah, it's to do with like fast acceleration, I think, but I could be wrong about that. Because it's like you got to press like left on like the exact right frame, and then like one frame later you press like right or something, and then I think you like press, and then I think you jump frame perfectly for like like you hold it for like the exact amount of time as well, like the A button. It's something like that. I guess it's a little easier on a controller, but like I don't know. I mean, bro's been playing on like basically emulator the entire time. But like everybody else, well, not literally, but like a lot of other people are playing on controller, so that he's just switching to the input style that everyone else is using. So like, what could possibly be the issue with that? Because the only thing is like, if there could be an argument made that some things are easier with like keyboard, but like, I don't know, it just gets to a point then where it's like banning it doesn't benefit anybody, it only hurts. It doesn't like make things more fair. Like at the end of the day, emulator is accepted, and being stuck on one input, it literally just hurts like the very, 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 very top, like the only people who are capable of world record. And even then, not all of them play on emulator. I think it's just a couple of the contenders. So literally, it pretty much is specifically only really hurting Niftski and probably like one other guy. So like, and considering Averge was the one pushing for it, it's like, and again, the mods were just not in favor of it originally. It's like very obvious what actually like went down in that mod chat.
Yeah, I mean, my whole stance on the actual input swapping thing to begin with is pretty simple. I consider myself, I guess, somewhat of like a traditionalist when it comes to rules for speedrunning. So the fact that playing on keyboard is allowed in the first place just seems like ludicrous to me. I think it's a load of old bollocks, and I don't think that emulators should be allowed either.
Of course you do.
But like, if you're gonna allow keyboard, like if you've got to the point where you're letting people play on keyboard, like,
well, it's because the emulator is like basically 100% perfect.
Well, I disagree with that though, because like my problem with a software emulator that isn't an FPGA is the fact that it has to go through a crappy Windows or Linux or Mac like OS layer, you know, and it has to have like the general purpose USB interface, like it's how it's delivering the inputs, as opposed to the original shift register and the original hardware that goes directly in. There are like subtle differences, and like for example, there's a video that I'm planning to make at some point maybe, which is about the this glitch in Super Metroid, which is called the Bomb Torizo skip, right? And so if I make the video, I'll explain it all in there. But basically, this Bomb Torizo skip, it requires you to do like perfect 30 hertz mashing. Like it's a 60 FPS game. You have to input every other frame. So it's like perfect mashing, right? And it's like, so cut a long story short, this trick in the game, they banned it because they said that it's too hard, basically was the reason. Or like, well, they basically said that because the trick is that precise, right, and it requires like 30 frame perfect inputs and this perfect frame perfect mashing and everything, even though there are people who can do it with a very low rate of consistency, but they can do it. They said, we're banning this because we want this trick to be like, if we're going to allow it, we want it to be like an even playing field across original hardware and emulator. And this trick is disadvantaged on emulator, even though the SNES, you know, even though the SNES is also like pretty much perfectly emulated like the NES is, right? Where they said they've actually like they've said that even though you can do the glitch on the original hardware, it's harder to do on the emulator because the glitch is that precise. It comes down to like subframe, like it comes down to the fact like just the USB interface, you know. The slight amount of variable delay at like a subframe level, you know, of pressing a controller of the USB bus, like that has an effect on the consistency of it. Or just like the very minor things with like the, you know, the fucking emulation itself, like the frame times and, you know, little things that you would normally never notice as a normal player. But when it comes to a trick this precise, people have studied it. Like there's been people who have done really in-depth study on this thing, on this particular glitch, and it's like, so they've had to like, I don't really agree with that ban because I feel like they've brought down the level of the run to emulator as a common denominator, because they're saying it was more consistent on original hardware because there's less bullshit, there's less OS layer, USB bus layer that adds this slight amount of variation that does actually matter for this. So this type of game, I don't know. I don't agree with the emulators really. Like, at least for it to be used for a world record or something, like I'd prefer if it isn't. You know,
well, these Mr. things you're on board with, just because there's not that OS layer that it has to go through.
I've not had a Mister. I probably will. I may get one at some point. I was thinking about doing that. But I do have like the Super NT, which is FPGA SNES. I mean, that has a few issues in of itself in terms of the accuracies. But point is, you know, like the Super NT that I've got, which is an FPGA of the SNES, in terms of the input circuitry, it's the same as the original hardware. Like it's a shift register. The inputs go directly, you know, in. There's no extra OS layer. There's no USB bus layer. So that would be fine. Like for that skip I was just talking about, the Bomb Torizo skip would be fine. It's the same as original hardware. So because with FPGA, we can get rid of the OS layer and we can get the direct input with a shift register, you know, like it was on the original hardware. And you can remove that little small subframe variations and whatnot and all that type of thing. And you know that it's always going to run at the exact hertz clock rate. That's another thing, the hertz clock rate. Like if you're, let's remember, like these consoles don't run at exactly 60 hertz. So, you know, if you're, and this has an effect directly on the timing. So like if you're on on emulator. Like one thing I would say, okay, for example, this Niftski guy who plays on emulator, how exactly is his emulator configured? Because if I know about this stuff because I've written emulators and all this, right? So I know about this stuff. So the original NES, right? It runs at 60.09 hertz, not 60 hertz, 60.09 hertz. That has an effect of like 1 second per 10 minutes of gameplay. Like it has an effect, on timing for speedruns. If you write an emulator, right, on a standard monitor that's 60 hertz, you will probably, like on a normal emulator, like the default way how you would write an emulator, you just say, okay, well, 60 hertz is close enough, just run it as that so it lines up with the refresh rate. If you have a variable refresh rate, like if you try to run it faster than that, it will all look all glitchy because the emulator is running at a faster rate than the screen can refresh. So you get like variable levels of input delay and all weird shit. Like it doesn't work. You can't do that. If you have a variable refresh rate monitor, that could like the G-Sync, FreeSync, whatever, then you can run the emulator at its original hertz and have the refresh rate match up, right? They still would probably be small inconsistencies compared to the original hardware though, because the original hardware is like a hardware clock, and this is like relying on Windows API calls that report the state of the timer, which only goes to a certain degree of accuracy, right? So it's like you can get it down to like nanosecond accuracy, but there's going to be slight variations compared to the original hardware crystal timer. So it's like when it's a game like this, because it's so firstly, is that Niftski guy, is he running the game at 60.09 with a vertical refresh rate monitor? If he isn't, then his run is already very dodgy. But is the emulator that he's using matching the exact hertz rate? Can the exact hertz rate even be matched without some minor variation? I don't think so. No, like on Windows OS, or just because of like the inaccuracies of the hardware timing capabilities, the level of precision they go to compared to the actual clock. It's like, I believe that for a game like this, where the whole thing is coming down to like a tiny 1 frame difference. The whole thing is like, it's like the most super optimized game ever. It's coming down to the most minute differences. That they're at the level of matching the TAS, and that's why we have this drama right now, because they're about to be at this level of like literally matching the TAS, right? When it comes to this type of game with this much precision, like I would prefer, but I don't want to say, because like on some level, if I'm not a runner of the game, I don't really have a right to stay an opinion. I also think that, so I don't really have the right to have an opinion based on that. I'm not familiar enough with the game. I don't run the game, but I prefer the world record isn't on emulator. The original hardware, I'd prefer it. I like original hardware, but you also can't escape the fact that the original hardware is only getting older and older. Some of these components inside become less like the clocks themselves, like the clock in the original hardware will have drift to it over time. Now, like 50 years old, the capacitors, stuff like that. So it's like the best way is probably FPGA going forward. Yeah, like a high quality FPGA. With I don't know enough about the Mister as a platform specifically. I don't have one yet. I'm planning to get one at some point, but I prefer that. Yeah, and so I like the fact that this Averge guy. This is kind of totally tangential to the actual topic and the drama, but I think this is like this might be a more interesting discussion than the actual fucking drama, because I don't think most people know about these things, and I don't know how much you know about all this stuff, Purple, because I think you're like a pro emulator guy, whatever. Which I generally would be most of the time as well, but especially with this game, where it's known as being like the most super hyper optimized. It's coming down to the subframe. It's coming down to the TAS, matching the TAS. Like this type of game, because I know there are these variations and whatnot. I don't know. I'm more of a original hardware or FPGA purist.
Because of how competitive it is, I'm under the assumption that it must surely be accurate enough. Given just how many runs are on these boards and just like the type of game, the older the game is, the more likely it feels like that the community is to be kind of traditionalist, and yet they still allow this kind of stuff, which leads me to believe, there's an argument to be made for that itself, but at the end of the day, like they do allow, I think, like 1 or 2 specific emulators. the thing is as well is that like other than 8-4, like all of the levels are like in intervals of fucking 21 frames, or you save or lose 21 frames. So like even if there's like a slight inaccuracy, like everything's still gonna come down to like the very last level, which doesn't like last very long. And even then, I mean, either way, the top 3 are all like not on console anyway. So that even then, considering it's like very obvious that Averge wanted us to pass specifically to hurt Niftski. Either way, like even he's on a Mister or whatever, so like at that point, like none of these fuckers runs would technically qualify then anyway.
Maybe Lukuki's 4th, but Lukuki has the best time on console. I'm
just saying that, you know, because I have like written emulators and stuff, like I'm kind of sensitive to these things. I don't want to say that I'm just against it. Like I say, I don't think I ultimately have the right to have an opinion because I don't play the game. So I don't actually think I have the right to have an ultimate opinion. So everything I'm saying is like, I'm saying this for your information or for the information of anyone listening. There are these things. There are cases where these little sub-frame minute differences do take place, and an emulator, you know, can't perfectly replicate it. FPGA can get closer when it comes to these type of things. You know, this has been an issue in this Super Metroid Bomb Torizo skip, which I'm planning to make a video on at some point, and stuff like that. So like, there is a bit more to it, technical stuff to it that probably most people don't know about. I'm overall pretty in favor of emulators, but like, it's just in this case, I don't know. I'm a bit sus of it. If I was in the game, if I was a player of the game, I'd have a more strong opinion on it because, you know. So this is just, you know, for people's information to consider.
I mean, as well, like, something to consider with Mario specifically is like all the top level runs now are timed by frame counting, because, you know, new records are down to like the 100th of a second. So a lot of the time they'll finish a run and not even know if it's a new record or not until they count the frames. So I don't know if that would factor into this like 60.09 hertz difference or whatever. But to finish the point I was making about 15 minutes ago, my whole stance on the keyboard thing is, if you're going to allow keyboard to begin with, I think that's daft. So at that point, you know, why not just go mental? If keyboard is allowed and controller is allowed, I don't see what harm there is in swapping between the two during the run. You know, people have been doing this in Mario 64 now for Bowser throws or whatever.
Yeah, the only thing they banned was like you have to use the same type of input throughout like an SM64 run, because people were using like a box controller to do frame walking, like make it free as fuck. So like they banned stuff like that.
Well, I believe
it pisses me off so much, because like as soon as you start allowing one thing, you're just like opening a can of worms to all of this nonsense.
I don't agree with that. I don't really agree with that. Well, what they banned in Mario, right, is basically there was a certain glitch in Mario, the frame walk, where you had to like tap up really quickly, right? It's basically had to spam up on the analog stick. Now, obviously, it's much easier if you bound up to just a button. It's far easier to spam it than having to spam it on an analog stick going up and down, because there's that travel distance, right? So some people would switch to a different controller where they've bound up to a digital button as opposed to the stick or whatever. And that was what they were doing. Then they were swapping back afterwards. Now that was banned. So they banned binding an analog input to a digital button. That's what they banned, which makes sense, right? And that's a pretty clear-cut line to draw. And that's what they banned Mario for the framework.
This is clearly like different though, because the inputs are still like read effectively the same with SMB1.
Yeah, the only difference really on a keyboard I can think is that like switching from left to right is different. Like you can hold left and right at the same time on a keyboard, which you can't on an NES D-pad. But even still, I don't think keyboard should be allowed whatsoever.
Well, this is one interesting thing, right? I don't. This is the thing, though. I'm talking about a game that I don't know about because I don't play, but I do care about it. It's a seminal game of speedrunning.
I mean, yeah, I will add, I don't know much about Mario Bros. 1 either. I just have this as like a blanket rule for everything.
I don't know what their rules are. Like, we're talking about stuff like, you know, some of these issues we're bringing up may have been things that have just already been settled by the community, right? But like, yeah, for example, the big thing, like you're saying with the left and right, if you're on a D-pad, if you're on original NES D-pad, obviously you can only, like, if you're holding right, you know, and then you want to switch to left, the D-pad has to like go all the way over to the left, right? Like you have to move your thumb over, whatever. Whereas if you're doing like WASD controls, it's A and D, you can have, you know, one finger hovering over A and one finger hovering over D, so you can easily just swap back and forth between them. So it's, at least on that, it's like objectively better, I would say. And interestingly, there was a whole in count. So we now have these Hall effect keyboards, right? I don't know if you guys know about this shit. This has been a bit of a drama in OSU, I think, or something. I've actually got one of these keyboards, but I'm not using it right now. I haven't really played it.
These bloody Wooting keyboards.
Yeah, I don't have that brand.
Yeah, I don't know. It's been much of a drama. Just people figured out that you could exploit them to cheat and like stream ways. Well, like all the top Ozu players, I think, use these Wooting keyboards now.
Well, the Wooting keyboards, that's just their brand. I mean, I don't, you know, the Hall effect keyboards, they can basically detect how much. So it's not digital, like it is a digital key that you just press down, but also it has like sensors where it can detect how much it's pressed down. So you can also customize, you know, the actuation distance, and it has other useful things to it and different features you can do with this. And one thing that you can do, and this was a scandal in Counter-Strike. So in Counter-Strike, you have a thing called counter strafing, a technique that all the pro players, or, you know, anyone half decent at Counter-Strike does this, where you'll be holding like the A button to move to the left, but then like you have to immediately release A and then immediately like tap D, like the opposite direction. So you strafe in one direction, then you immediately stop and strafe the other direction. And that allows you to like come to a standstill faster, so you can shoot faster. Now these Hall effect keyboards, they were being set up to basically do that automatically for you, to give you a perfect counter strafe, like a frame perfect counter strafe every time. So you'd be moving to the left, you'd be holding A to move to the left, then you'd press D, and it would automatically simulate as if like you'd stop pressing A, right? Like you go just to D. So like it would do a perfect frame perfect counter strafe for you every time, right? This is the type of thing that you can do with keyboards, and depending on what keyboard you have, and depending on, it's called SOCD cleaning, is like how, you know, the term for it. You know, how does the keyboard deal with multiple directional inputs being pressed at the same time? How does the keyboard deal with like you're holding A but then you press the opposite direction? Does it still keep the A pressed? That's one way you can resolve it. You know, like it's called SOCD cleaning is what it's called, like the different ways of resolving this. It's like a whole thing in fighting games as well. This would have an effect on Mario Bros. 1. This is a type of thing that comes into effect with keyboard that you don't have to worry about with D-pad, because like I say, D-pad, none of this is an issue. Keyboard, suddenly you need to deal with SOCD cleaning, Hall effect keyboards, how they can have an effect. There is just an inherent advantage that you can, on a keyboard, you can have a finger that hovers over every directional input, so you can immediately swap to any directional input, like up, down, left, right. Whereas with a fucking D-pad, you know, like I say, you can only hold one direction at a time. You have to move around your thumb. That is a benefit to, like, a pretty much an objective benefit to any form of directional input on keyboard. So yeah, I mean, I don't know. I don't have an opinion on it where it comes to SMB1, because I don't think I deserve to have an opinion because I don't play the game. I agree that keyboard brings in more things to consider like that than if you just say, okay, we just have to play with D-pad, you know, because that was the original whatever. I agree with that.
Well, the controller could also just get more worn out over time anyway, and then that can potentially cause issues.
Say that again.
Like theoretically, I would imagine that the D-pad on an actual controller could get worn out enough to potentially accept multiple inputs. But even if I'm wrong, it would still just like make it feel different from like a good condition controller anyway.
Yeah, I mean, still, even if that somehow happened, like it won't really give you an advantage in the game. It's just, if you just compare, you know, because like, for example, I play these, you know, shmup games where the whole thing is about directional input. And in those games, it's like I usually play those games of D-pad, but I know that a lot of the best players play on, because I just prefer it. It's more chill to play that way. But I know that some of the best players play with keyboard or leverless controllers where they can have their fingers hovering over up, down, left, and right. So they can have an individual finger assigned to each button. So they don't have to like move the finger around and have any form of delay if they want to switch to another button or another direction. That would come into play on this Mario Bros. 1. Especially that last, isn't that whole thing with the last level? There's a lot.
Yeah, because it's like you can tie tasks into 8-4, and then it's no longer in 21 frame intervals after that. So like everything, like you need to play 100% identically to the task. Then if you like, you can't. There's no wiggle room to mess up or anything.
Like the current records now, don't they tie the task up until the very last level?
Yeah, that's like the top like 4. They all do that.
Well, it's strange to me that that's the thing again, like, I don't know. So I don't even know, in terms of this drama, he's apparently switches from the keyboard to the controller for one section. Like, I wonder what that is. Because
it's like a fast acceleration thing, I think.
Is it like is it like for a whole level that he switches, or just a subsection of the level?
It's probably the entire like level. Because I feel like you wouldn't have time to switch inputs like in the middle of the level.
Is it? Yeah, probably not. But sometimes like you go down a pipe or whatever, there's like a little loading screen, so maybe you could.
I think where you would do it, like where you would do a fast acceleration, you wouldn't really. I mean, maybe I don't think he would do it like in the middle of a level. I mean, I'd have to check, but I doubt it.
Well,
do you know if he does it?
The thing that I remember, I don't know the answer to this either, but I seem to remember that Niftski and like 1 or 2 other people already had like task tie ILs for 8.4 submitted and approved using the controller swapping method, which is what prompted the vote on it initially, that resulted in saying, oh yeah, this is fine. But I don't know, so it does sound weird if you did that mid-level.
So is he doing it in the last level?
Yeah.
Sounds like it.
I don't know. Sounds weird. Again, if anything, I would expect, but again, I don't know because I don't play the game, but I think the keyboard is better.
But again, well, either way, though, like, they allowed it, and then some guy came in, and now they don't allow it. So either way, like, it's very obvious what happened, and they need to have another discussion about it.
Well, that's the thing. When you say it's very obvious what happened, I don't understand what happened. So, like, they voted one way, but then this guy comes in and suddenly, like, convinced everyone to change their opinion and do a re-vote on it.
Yeah, the vote was like, I don't even know, it was something crazy, like fucking 10 against 2 or something.
Was the re-vote result.
Yeah, like, so we know that all of these people who are taking over, we have like a bunch of Zoomers who, you know how to play game on mouse and keyboard and all that. And they're coming to these games like Mario Bros. 1 and taking over the leaderboards, right? And we know that like this debate between Averge and Niftski is apparently, you know, 2 Zoomers or Gen Alphas, right? Who even is running this leaderboard? Like, who even are these moderators? They're a bunch of 17-year-olds as well.
I mean, presumably, like,
I don't recognize any of them. Like, I do know of some SMB1 runners, and none of them are the moderators.
The main things that I really remember related to kind of the trick being banned after they voted to re-allow it is that the whole campaign was spearheaded by Averge, who has the any percent record at the moment, and knew Niftski was going for task tie, and Niftski was using this controller swapping technique, and Averge wasn't. Averge was like rebinding keyboard keys or something. And yeah, Averge basically spearheaded this whole revote and was like dating someone who was on the mod team, and I think was like using her to like persuade people for the revote or whatever. And there was something as well with like Lakuki applying to be a mod, but his application wasn't approved until like Lakuki was one of the people who really wanted to keep it allowed, even though he's like the best controller on console player at the moment. And like he wasn't allowed to join the mod team. Like they purposely stalled approving him until after the vote was already held. Like it all seemed a bit dodgy, but as I said earlier, everybody involved seems pretty young. Like Averge definitely seems to be in the wrong, so hopefully this whole situation gets rectified and dealt with accordingly, and Averge will grow up to realise.
Well, here's one thing though about that though. Like, people can't get conflated between the issue itself of whether the controller swap should be allowed or not. There's that. And then there's the issue of the meta-political, I don't know what's going on with this Averge guy. Like, he shows up and then he, like, somehow, like, convinces everyone to flip their vote. Like, he's, I don't know, like, he's pulled up Epstein blackmail material on all of them or something. That's the thing that confuses me. Like, how did he, like... The way, if you put it like that, it sounds like he came in and like bribed them or like paid them all $100 to flip their vote or something. I don't know.
Well, it definitely looks like intentional sabotage based on what I've seen. I've watched Niftski's video and I've read the 2 documents he posted. One of which was like mostly uninteresting. It was just like, a pattern of bad behaviour from Averge. Which is like, okay, whatever. But like,
you know,
but it seems like for some time now, Averge is just like hates Niftski because even though Averge has a better any percent time, like Niftski's still the more popular streamer, and like people seem to view him as the best Mario player or whatever. And Averge just didn't like this. So
I think that basically put it this way. So this Niftski guy clearly doesn't like Averge, probably for good reason.
Well, no, now yes, but previously no.
Yeah, sure. But point is, you know, so maybe this Averge guy, you know, he's been being an absolute cunt. Maybe he's done bad things, whatever. Like he's talking shit, whatever he's doing. But and so let's say, you know, Niftski comes out, he makes a video talking about Averge. Look at Averge, he's doing all this crappy stuff, right? He's made me turn against him because of his bad behavior, whatever. There's that, you know, Averge may be personally a bad guy, or at least doing bad stuff at the moment. That also doesn't necessarily mean that Niftski is in the right on whether the thing should be banned or not, right? Like, those are 2 separate issues. I'm still kind of my default stance, like, I'm inclined to agree with Niftski just because at the end of the day, like I say, it's up to the people to do their vote. And to the extent that everyone voted, you know, in Niftski's favor, like, well, you would have thought that should be the end of it then. Okay, well, you know, it's not really my place to say because I'm not a runner of the game. So if you're saying that all these people voted and they took his side and that should have been the end of it, but then this guy came in and started somehow meddling and he got people to flip their vote and do a re-vote, that's obviously suspect. I think you could also say, though, maybe this guy Averge came in and he just made some really good arguments to these people that they hadn't heard before. I was like, oh, actually, this Averge guy is right. You know, it should be banned. And then maybe they flipped it out of just pure good faith. Right? Like, we don't know. I don't really fully understand that. So that's why I can't really say.
Well, the poll that has been had was definitely like polluted by Averge's behaviour. It's like he had this little group going where he was just like telling everyone go and vote no. It's like,
yeah, like they could be taken out of context, but like there were just a bunch of screenshots that is just like basically linking the vote and just being like vote no.
And then even after the vote passed, like they'd scheduled like a Discord event or something called like Niftski is over party or some nonsense. It just seems very dodgy. Like all this.
I don't think it's just dodgy. It's like very blatantly obvious.
Yeah, like I mean, as Purple said earlier, it's like the only person who really gains from this is Averge, and the only person who it's to their detriment is Niftski.
There are other like good emulator players. There is like King of Johnny Boy, and he's not far off the record either. But it is like, let's be real, it is mostly about Niftski, especially because like he's considered the overall best runner.
Well, because he is. If we're ignoring like Lakuki, who like actually plays on real hardware.
I did look at the mod list, by the way, and like even though I don't like, they all are within like 2 point something seconds of the record. So like they are like good players. I just don't know like how long they've been mods for or whatever.
I mean, God, there was another thing I remember. Like, even before Niftski made his video, like Averge had posted some like Google Doc to Blue Sky or Twitter or whichever one he uses.
I think it was Twitter.
It was like this big doc just trying to cancel Niftski, basically. And
he was trying to get the jump.
Like,
because like apparently he knew the doc was coming against him, so he posted one first.
Oh, okay. Because I read the doc that Averge made, and it just seemed like he was trying way too hard to find dirt on Niftski, and when he couldn't find anything, he's like, oh, I'll just share all this dirt on other people that Niftski is like tangentially associated with, and then try to hold Niftski accountable for it. It just seemed like such a stretch, and this is what I'm going back to earlier. So much of this is just like childish, petulant nonsense that's just wasting everyone's time.
I think he could have potentially, like, obviously long term, but I definitely think he could have recovered if he just like didn't post that initial doc and then just like said he was sorry, didn't try to make excuses, kicked himself from the mod team, and then he just just disappeared for a little bit, or even if he just still wanted to do runs, maybe if he did them offline or something, just didn't really talk to anyone. I think he probably could have, because then people would be like, all right, well, because in the future it'd be like, okay, this was years ago, like he was like a kid or whatever. I feel like he's potentially dug himself like too far deep now.
Yeah, I mean, all Averge really had to say from what I've seen, I know that they've posted another document. I think there's about 6 total now, which obviously I'm not asked to read all of them. But like Averge's initial response on Twitter, like right after Niftski's video came out, was like, oh yeah, I've done some bad things, but there's also some stuff that I don't agree with, but I'm not going to explain why, and we should have a revote, and that's it.
I did want to mention that actually, because he had like the worst opinion of all time that like high level players should not be mods, and that's just like fucking god awful, because they just have like the most powerful people in the community in charge of all this shit, and they just don't understand what they're doing. Hey, keep in mind, he was a fucking mod. He's a world record holder. He's a mod, and he still has that opinion. Like, that's actually insane.
Yeah, that seems a bit off.
I think there's some credence to that, because obviously what he's getting at is going to be conflicts of interest, right? Like if Niftski is a mod, and he wants to do some strat or whatever that's controversial, and he's just gonna like vote for, like, just say as the mod that it's allowed because it benefits him as the player. Like, because we like, again, to make like a political analogy, this is why you have like, you're meant to have these different power centers that can keep each other in check and stuff like that. So I think there is credence to that argument.
That's the thing, though. He's a world record holder, and he was a mod, so it just doesn't make sense.
Well, but okay. Well, I don't know enough about that guy, but I would just say that TLDR with this whole thing, like, these guys are beefing. Yeah, there's a lot of like personal beef in it, but then there's like the underlying issue, which is kind of separate from the personal beef. I don't really understand I don't want to say that I really have a strong opinion on it, because I'm not familiar enough with the game or even the context of when he does this controller swap or whatever. I think that ultimately, like when you said there were my last question, I guess, is the voting. Weren't you saying it was like 10-4 or something like that? So it's like only the moderators voting. It's not like the whole community.
Yeah.
Yeah, as far as I think it was like 10-2, if anything,
no,
like initially.
The original vote, I don't remember, but the revote they had was like 14-2. It was like a landslide, and one of the 2 people was Niftski.
Well, I think it's already dodgy that it's like just these mods voting, I guess. Like in the past, this again is debatable, depends on the community and whatnot. But in the past, like in Ocarina of Time, let's say, Ocarina of Time has had a lot of votes over the years on various things. For example, intro skip was a big one, where they voted of whether they should be allowed to load a save file to skip past the intro or not. It's other things as well. They usually do it like you cast a vote, and when you cast your vote, you will paste in like a link to at least one thing that proves that you've got anything to do with this game, right? So like you need to post a link to a run that you've done just to show like you've done a run, and it's not, ideally it's better than last place, right? And now we say, okay, this guy, and ideally it's within some form of recent history and it's not like 20 years old, right? And in that case we say, okay, we can count your vote, right? Otherwise we're just not going to count your vote. That's usually how they've done it in these other games. I think that system seemed to work pretty well for these other games like Ocarina of Time. So if it were up to me, I might say, maybe they should do a vote on it again, but instead of it just being these 10 guys who are all beefing with each other, right? Because that's the thing. It's like, if it's just it's like 10 guys who are voting and they all like are personally beefing with each other and like switching back and forth between factions based on whatever nonsense, right? Well, it wouldn't matter if there was 10 people were switching side based on nonsense or not, if there was like 100 people voting in total, or like a few hundred people voting in total, because the rest of the player base would be allowed to vote. So if it were up to me, I'd come in right now and say fuck all this, fuck all you, Niftski, whatever else. I'd say we're gonna do a vote, and it's gonna be the same type of system of what they're doing at Ocarina of Time. Anyone can vote, but when you vote, you have to show that you have at least some stake in the community, that you're at least have done a run within some form of recent history that's not terrible, or something similar, or maybe you're a glitch hunter that has found a really useful glitch or anything like that. Just something to show that you have a stake in the game, and we'll count your vote, right? And then decide it based on that. That's probably what I would do.
Yeah, 'cause I seem to remember reading or hearing like some concern with these Mario people, like given how popular a streamer Niftski is and like how kind of mainstream of a speedrun Mario Brothers is, there was always concern that like holding a sort of a public community vote could be so easily swayed by one of these people just influencing all their viewers to vote for what they want the outcome to be, and the viewers will just mindlessly do it without even thinking. So like vetting people by at least like having them prove that they've got one submitted run. It's like how many of Niftski's viewers really are gonna have a submitted run on the leaderboard? Not that many, I would imagine.
Yeah, so I think that would be a good way to do it.
Yeah, I agree with that. Anyway, I think we should move on to the final topic of today's podcast. That being the brand new, when was it posted? Like 2 or 3 days ago. The new Summoning Salt vid. So this vid was covering the history of Spyro world records, and by that he actually means only Spyro won any percent. So this is something that Retro knows a lot about, something I know a little about, and yeah. So Retro, I know you haven't seen the video, so.
Well, it's a long video. I've watched a bit of it, like the first 5 minutes of it, and I skipped around it a little bit. I already know the whole story. I mean, I've personally witnessed the whole story because I know about that game. I've been following that game for like many years, since like 2014 or something. And in fact, it's a video that I myself have considered making before, but I never did. But I started doing some background research and putting together a document for it. So like even I've considered doing that video myself before. And I have done a video on one of the main characters in the story, who is Saboom. So I've done a video about Saboom, like a documentary about him, who was one of the most important Spyro players. Who, my video kind of doubles a little bit as like a 120% world record history, which is the full completion category for that game. So I mean, I already know the story. I don't need to watch the Summoning Salt video. And I guess that ties in with the critique a bit that I've got of Summoning Salt, which is, I mean, again, this isn't really like a drama topic. Like, okay, Summoning Salt released video number, whatever it is, 50 on the next game. That's, the same formula as all of his videos. That's kind of whatever. So there's not really much to comment on with that. I'm sure it's a good video. I'm sure that it, is going to entertain his viewer base, and that, aligns with all of his other videos. So there's not really much to say about that, I don't think. So if I'm going to comment anything about this, what and then I need to give a bit of a more meta level about Summon Insult and his effect in general. I think the critique of Summon Insult is basically like, he is the biggest speedrun YouTuber, I'm pretty sure, by whatever metric, maybe, or at least who's solely dedicated to speedrunning or whatever. So he has a big cultural effect, and stuff like that. So systematically, like, he's affecting things, and he's got his formula going. But when he made his first ever video, his first ever world record history, it was about Punch Out. Now, Punch Out is a game that Summon Insult, I believe himself, has the world record in, or at least used to. And so, like, he obviously it made sense. He started by doing a video, world record history, on the game that he played and that he knew about. Now, however, does Summon Insult speedrun any other game other than Punch Out? Not that I know of. Maybe he does, but point is, like, after he done Punch Out, okay, well, that's it. He's now covered every game that he actually knows about, that he actually has first-hand experience in, that he's actually in the community, right? So then what happens is, he's like, well, I need more content. Let me just go around to every other community and take their story and put it into a video. Now, that's fine, but he does have an effect, at least now, with how big he is now and everything, that there's a certain effect where it's like, Summon Insult with his 2 million subscribers on his back, like, comes into the Spyro Discord or whatever, and starts messaging, a few of the big names or whatever, saying like, oh, I'm guess what, guys, I'm planning to make a Spyro video. Do you want to help me out? I don't know shit about this game. I've never fucking played it in my life. I've never turned it on. I don't know the story. But I'm sure that one of you will come groveling to me with a silver platter to say, oh, Summon Insult. Oh my God, I can't believe it. You're covering Spyro. Oh, you're going to cover me. I'm going to be in the video. Oh, let me deliver to you on a silver platter every single piece of information. Oh, by the way, Salt, come to me at any moment if you ever need any help, if you ever need any research, if you ever need any account or interview or anything of anything that ever happened in the history of this game. I'll be here on Discord awaiting your ping so I can tell you every piece of information, do all the research from you so you can make the video and take all the fucking credit for our fucking thing that you're an outsider to, right? That's the problem. That's the problem on a meta level with Summon Insult. Now, this is obviously a controversial thing to say because Summon Insult is a well-liked, well-respected guy with a big audience and all that. And I'm not saying that he's doing anything malicious. I understand, like, I totally get it. Like, he doesn't want to work some 9-to-5 wagey job, like, obviously he'd much prefer to, make a bunch of money from YouTube. And obviously, like, he's got a winning formula. He just needs to keep applying that formula over and over again. And this is just like the natural effects. Like, I'm not saying that there's anything remotely malicious being done by Summon Insult himself, really. Or that he's trying to do anything malicious. I'm not faulting him for, like, he wants to grow a big YouTube channel where he makes bank and he can buy a house and he doesn't have to be a wage slave, right? Like, I'm happy with all that. My problem, so I'm not ascribing anything negative to him at all by saying any of this. But there is, like, a systematic effect that takes place, right? So even if he's not doing anything bad intentionally, that doesn't mean there aren't, like, second and third order, like, systematic effects that are kind of bad or can be critiqued. Like, because I am a Spyro guy, right? Yeah, I don't really love it that, this guy comes in and, like, it's not his thing. Spyro isn't his thing. Even though you could say speedrunning is his thing, well, speedrunning is a broad category. It's really split between the games. And so it's like, it kind of feels like, you're just coming in to, like, grift off of our thing. Like, this is our history. This is our community. We're the people who sat here for thousands of hours. We're the people to find all the glitches, to do all the world records. We're the guys who, were the ones who first-hand experienced all of the storylines and everything about it, right? Like, if it was up to me, it's one of our guys. Like, it should be one of our guys who makes this video and gets credit. I'm not saying me. Like I say, I thought about making that video. I just decided not to. But I'm saying, like, somebody else, if it was up to me in, like, my ideal world, like, some other guy who's actually in the scene, would make the video and he would get 1 million views from it. and like get all the credit and praise for it, as opposed to like this guy who like, again, I'm not ascribing anything, certainly not, that he intends to be malicious or anything. Like, and you can say, well, if nobody else is going to make the video, if they haven't done it by now, well then fair enough, it's like his for the taking. But, and there's, nobody's got like a copyright claim over the fucking Spyro history. But there is still an effect of like, he is just kind of like, in a sense, coming in to grift off your thing. And because he's so popular, there's going to be people who just start sucking him off and say like, oh, let me just give you all the information, do all the research for you, and give you the accounts of everything that, so you can make the video. And I want to be featured in the video as well. Like, obviously, like these people, they, in their heads, a lot of them stand to benefit because they want to be featured in the video and get attention to their stream and whatnot. So it's like, I don't know, like some of it sits wrong with me because I only make videos about things that I personally know about, like communities that I'm personally in, things where I firsthand know the story. That's more authentic to me. That's what I make. I've never made a video.
I'm in the same boat as you. I've never gone out to like a community that I have no involvement in whatsoever and been like, oh, I want to make a video about this, but I know nothing. Can you give me all the info?
But again, it's like, if I wanted to become a YouTuber who made a full-time living from it, so I didn't have to be a wage slave and stuff, then I probably would have to do that, because I'd exhaust the things that I personally know about or the communities I've personally been in. So I'd have to do that most likely.
I mean, like, as far as sort of, I guess, dodgy practices that go into making a career on YouTube go, like, summoning salt is nowhere close to the worst offender.
So it's like, it's a nuanced situation. I'm just making that point because there is truth in it. And I'm trying to make that point because nobody else is going to make it, or like the one guy who is going to make it, because it is a valid point that has truth in it, even though I'm not ascribing anything malicious to someone in Salt or anything bad on his character. So it's a point that should be made. And I feel like nobody else is going to make it. So yeah, that's just kind of somewhat of the problem. Like I say, I felt that a bit personally with this Spyro video, because it's like I say, if it were in my perfect world, some other guy would have made the video who like is an actual guy in the Spyro scene. I'm trying to think if there's an analogy, like what's a way of putting it? I play these shmup games as which is like a niche genre, and the genre is from the arcades. And so since the arcade, none of them really get made anymore, except for indie games, because they were like an arcade genre. So when the arcades died off, they stopped being made, right? And there was a bit of a drama amongst the shmup community, because there was some big company that came in. Oh, well, I don't know how, they weren't like huge. They were just like, there was a company with funding who came in to make a shmup, right? So they kind of came in and they were like, oh, we're going to like bring shmups back. No one's made them since the arcade days. We're going to come in, we've got funding, we're going to make like a new proper professional quality shmup, right? And they got, but like all these developers who were making it though, they weren't shmup players though. Like it was like some group of players. It was like some indie dev company who had gotten funding to make a shmup game, but they weren't shmup players, right? They weren't in the community. They didn't play the games. It was just a great. So now they come in, they got all this support from the shmup community, because all these shmup players, they're all people who are like desperate for another good shmup because no one's making them anymore, right? Since the arcade. So they come in and they market to all these shmup people. They start consulting with some of these shmup people as well, who are like offer themselves. So this is like a very analogous situation when this happened with this game. A bunch of these shmup players who are like, oh man, maybe this is an opportunity to like revive the dead shmup scene, and we should go in and give free labor basically to help these guys and give them feedback and playtest for them because we're that passionate, right? So basically these guys, they kind of exploited, this other community of the shmups, of the shmup players in a certain sense, kind of got them to like free labor for them, preyed on their hopes and whatnot, but they were outsiders themselves. And when the game did eventually come out, it was shit basically. And like they didn't really listen to any of the people's actual advice. They, it was like when it came out, they ultimately discarded 99% of everyone's advice and, the actual players and all that. And it was kind of shit basically. So it's like that is like an analogous situation. Like when an outsider comes into a scene, he's ultimately just there for his own benefit. Like ultimately, Summon Insult is there for his own benefit to make another video, get another million views, get another sponsor placement. Like that's why he's there. You know, would he have ever researched Spyro speedrun otherwise? And like that's kind of like the somewhat of an ickiness of it, right? That's why there's like a bit of an ickiness to it, for lack of a better word. But ultimately, I'm not trying to start some beef with Summon Insult. I'm not saying that he's a bad guy. I fully understand the reasons why he does it. I'm sure all of his fans love it. I don't think his videos are slop. Like his videos clearly are better, you know, at least.
It's not just Summon Insult that does this either. I mean, like half the games that Karl Jobst covers, he ain't got the foggiest about. So it just, if there's a cheater, there'll probably be someone that goes to him and says, "Oh, there's a cheating situation." And with Karl, it doesn't even need to be about speedrunning anymore.
Yeah, like, so again, like there's a billion people literally, you know, worse to take issue with in the world.
Summon Insult's going to be the guy, but he's going to be the guy that if he gets criticised about this, it will be him, just because he's the most popular. But there's plenty of other people doing exactly the same thing.
Yeah, like, so like I need to like balance everything I'm saying here by saying like this is not some like scathing critique of Summon Insult. Like I hate him, like, you know. That he's like,
it's food for thought, so to speak.
If you were going to go after anyone, there's like a billion times worse people, right? But that doesn't mean that we can't critique and analyze these type of effects that do take place, these dynamics that do come up, even if unintentionally. But you know, with these scenes and communities and stuff like that.
I mean, you can argue the same thing. Like, just take for example, like some YouTuber that makes like lost media videos. But half the time, all they'll do is go to a Reddit thread, and like they've got everything laid out for them, and they'll just turn it into a script and make the video. Like it's not that much different, and that person doesn't even necessarily need to interact with the community at all. Like half the time, the information is just laid out there for them. Like I don't see how that's much of a difference. Or like all these YouTubers, like Turkey Tom or whatever, who just does the exact same thing but with like kiwi farms. He'll just find a new topic on kiwi farms and like all the work's just there for him in the OP.
I think it's just because, like for us two specifically, like me and you, because we're speedrun people who are really into it, who are like passionate about it. And when we make a video, we don't, you know, when we don't, you know, do that type of thing, because like we only want to make a video on something that we're really personally passionate about. So our passion comes across as really authentic, right? Like, so it kind of, we're sensitive to this type of thing because we're creators and we operate in a certain way. But we're also not, you know, doing it like Summon Insult, like trying to make a living out of it like he is. So he's under different constraints and all that than we are. But it's just like, it feels a bit off to us because we can't really imagine just like going to some random other community and like sucking in like a black hole, you know, all the attention, all the knowledge and everything, so we can make the video and get all the credit for something that like we're not, because it's just like a question of authenticity. I can't sit there, like I say, I haven't watched the video. I don't want to sit and watch the video, partially because it's just not authentic to me. Like when Summon Insult is like, and welcome to the history of Spyro, it's like, well, you know, I'm not convinced that you care about Spyro. Like, no matter what like inflection that he puts into his voice, like no matter how much he's good at reading the script or whatever, like I'm not convinced that you care at all about Spyro. That's basically what my issue is. Like his passion doesn't come through because there is no passion because he doesn't play the fucking game. So it's like the whole speedrun thing, YouTubing and all that, it started from people who were so passionate because there was no money in it as well. Like from the days, like Summon Insult, he represents a transitional era when, you know, of like the previous era of speedrunning before, where it was just purely out of love and passion and there was no money in it. But he's like a representative almost, again, not intentionally, just like subliminally or like, you know, like not saying he was
the guy like all the normies know.
Yeah, like so he is like not necessarily because of his own machinations or whatever, but he or like some evil plan. It's just he is a representative of almost like big money speedrun content, like, you know, like normifying it, you know, and like he doesn't actually care about the stuff he's saying really, because, or at least I'm not convinced that he cares about. And you guys, you're not going to believe it. And then he got the new Spyro record. Well, if I say that in my video, like, I think my passion would come across more, because it's like, I do care about Spyro. I've been following Spyro for 12 years. When he says that, it's like, okay, but it's like, you know, you don't give a fuck. Like, my question is, has Summoning Soul, even though he's now completed the creation of a 1.5 hour video on Spyro, like, has he ever actually even played or at least completed that Spyro game?
I mean, Halo 2 is the one I always think back to. Like, it just doesn't strike me as the type of thing Summoning Soul would care about in the slightest.
Yeah, so that's my issue. Like, that's one reason why I don't watch his videos, because if I'm gonna watch the video of like the history of Spyro World Records, okay, give it to me from a guy who's been like in the Spyro speedrunning scene for like the last 10 years. You know, I don't want it from some guy who's just like a month ago like rolled up into the DMs of the world record holders for them to like give him all the research. Not saying that he doesn't do research himself, obviously, but like they will point him all the right directions at least. And like, you know, and then for him to make the video and then for him to fuck off and never say anything about Spyro again.
Yeah, well, until he releases it on VHS.
Yeah.
Well, anyway, Purple, I don't know if you have anything to add to the conversation about the ethics of Summoning Soul's video production process.
Well, I feel like my opinion of it is slightly more positive. I understand the concerns with, you know, it takes attention away from the actual community itself and just puts it right back on him, but also, and you're also missing a lot of like, you're missing a lot of the little things, like, because I actually like used to follow Simpsons Hit and Run for quite a long time, and then I actually watched the video a few days ago, even though I know it's like over a year old, but I watched it a few days ago, unrelated to this podcast. I just watched it, and I was surprised by how like little like the actual strat, like I guess they're more like miscellaneous strats, but I still think like it's almost like it's hard for like the viewer to process how these runners were able to improve like minute barrier after minute barrier, like how they were able to do that, because it just like the actual strats don't get mentioned that much, and it's more about just like this big thing got found, so it's like 50 seconds, and then they just grind for like the next 6 months, and the record's gone down by like 3 minutes. It's like, yeah, but how did they do that? There's just like the little things are being missed. I will say though, like in like, I don't know, like I think while it is more ideal that somebody in the community like makes a video, if they haven't made a video yet, then that implies that they don't want to, or like they don't know like how to make a good script, or you know, how to edit or something. Like there's a lot of games like where they've had a long time to make a video and they have not made a video, so it's like, and also with Summoning Salt, there's at least the guarantee that the video will like perform well, so at the minimum a lot of people will like see this game, like whatever he's covering, they will see at least a brief version of events. Like they'll see like the history of it, even if it's not with as much like nuance, even if it's not as detailed as somebody in the community, even if it's not like as passion driven.
I have contentions with the Simpsons Hit and Run video specifically, considering I have the oldest recorded run of all story missions, and that wasn't mentioned whatsoever. So I feel like he's failed to do his research there, just because he wasn't bothered to click the console tab on speedrun.com. But life goes on.
I don't know like how much effort he puts into like contacting people, because I will say he did a poll like not that long ago of like, oh, what game should I cover next? And my game was on there, the SpongeBob SquarePants movie. It was on there. It got like the third least votes, but I mean, hey, at least it wasn't last. But like, I had no idea that he was. Well, he doesn't need to ask my permission for him to put the game in the fucking poll on Twitter, especially because it didn't win. But I'm just saying, like, I have no idea how much effort he puts into contacting people. If he wanted to cover the game, I feel like I would give him permission to, because like I did want to make a history video, for no pause storage, like, well, it would be no major glitches, and then it turns into no pause storage. I wanted to do one after 59, and then a trick got found that made 59 very easy, and now the record's fucking 56, so there's just no point. Well, there's not no point, but it just, like, it doesn't feel as special. So I feel like, okay, well, I didn't get to, like, properly achieve. It's not like I'm going to be, like, super ecstatic about telling the story of the 59 anyway, because it was easy. So, I don't know, like, at that point, especially because it's like a small game and like my editing, like I wanted to improve editing, but I've just been stuck making the same like 2 videos for years, so I just haven't improved. And like I won't say who, just in case they don't want me to say, but somebody else then was interested in making a video, history video, like an actual runner of the game, and I was like, well, I wanted to do it, but like I don't know, I'm kind of busy, so I guess you can make it if you want. But as soon as like something sold seemingly had like literally any interest in that whatsoever, like I haven't even thought about making a video, and that other person I have no idea yet because we haven't talked about it, but like it does feel like, I don't know, it's like I don't think my community, well, I say my community, like the community that I'm in, I don't know if we have the tools, I don't know if we have the skills to tell the tale, especially because a lot of history is actually lost, because there was like an old SpongeBob server, they just had like all the SpongeBob games, and it's gone, and then they made another one, but then it eventually turned into the BFBB server, and then there was another server, because it was like a whole thing, like a guy, for the record, he got arrested for being a pedophile, but anyway, he divided the community, greatly, and then that server basically just turned into like mostly the TSSM, because all the other channels were dead. That channel got that server got fucking deleted as well, and then we finally have the TSSM server from like mid 2018 or some shit onwards. So that is a good amount of history, and then a guy who we banned from the community found like a lot of stuff, and then I don't know, it just gets to a point where it's like, oh, it feels like I can't tell the full story anyway. So if I can't tell the full story, might as well just have him cover it. He's better at content creation than I am, and a lot more people would see it.
What was the username? Like Hazel? Is it Hazel?
No, it's not. Well, for a band, but not them.
Okay, somebody else.
Yeah, I'm not gonna say who, because fucking hell, he's terrible. But yeah.
Oh, it was a bloke. Okay, well, anyway, I'm gonna bring things back to Spyro for a second.
But wait. I got one more thing to say about Summon Insult. I only just remembered this whilst you guys just talking there, which is that I have had an interaction once with Summon Insult many years ago, as in like almost a decade ago, which was I made a world record history video, right? Which was the Ocarina of Time world record history, which has about 900k views, and so that is my most popular video because it's got almost 1 million. And when I made that video back then, that was made in 2017, and in a like an interesting flip, I'm kind of critiquing Summon Insult because he's kind of, when he comes to a community, he kind of comes and encroaches on that community in a certain way, right? Well, at the time, I remember I was thinking like the opposite way around. Well, making a world record history, that's his territory, that's his gimmick, that's his thing, right? So am I encroaching on his territory by me making a world record history, right? And in fact, I knew that if I went ahead and made that world record, even the Ocarina of Time, that is one of my games. That was the first game that I ever ran. That's a game that I was intimately familiar with the history, right? It was the first game I ever got into a speedrunning. So I was definitely like community member of that game. I was thinking about making this record history, but I was concerned, am I like encroaching on this Summon Insult guy's territory, right? And I knew as well that his audience, because by the way, like nobody else had already, this is far back, this is 2017. Nobody else had already copied his formula. I don't know if anybody else had even done it yet, like taken his concept, but done it themselves, right? So I think I might have been the first person to do that even. And I messaged him and I was like, I'm thinking about doing Ocarina of Time history, I know a lot about the game. Do you have any issue with that? And this was so long ago, the messages are totally lost now. I don't even remember exactly what he said. But what I basically remember him saying, but I definitely don't remember the exact wording. But I just remember the impression that he gave, or like what it sounded. Basically, he said something like, from what I remember, he said something like, well, I can't stop you from making it. You can do whatever you want, but I would kind of prefer that you didn't, or something like that. Because if this is actually kind of interesting, if you look at Someone Insult's channel, the biggest glaring omission from it is an Ocarina of Time video, because Ocarina of Time is like, it's one of those like big major staple speedrun games.
Yeah, it was the most popular speedrun in like 2014 and like the years surrounding that, probably.
That has a huge amount of history on it. That has, in my opinion, it is the most fascinating of all record histories in terms of all the things and all the, you know, different dramas and all the insane amount of glitches and everything. It's like, it's insane. It is the most crazy world record history of any game. And it's like, if I remember correctly, he basically said something along the lines of, I can't stop you from making it. You can do what you want. If you want to make it. But I would kind of prefer if you didn't. You know, that's what I seem to remember him saying.
Well, the only interaction I've ever had with Summoning Soul, I guess, just besides like me being in his stream chat or whatever, was pretty much the same thing. It was like 2018. I wanted to make a record progression on Monkey Ball. And so I just messaged him to say, oh, I want to make this video, just want to make sure like I'm not getting in the way of any plans you might have had. And he just said, yeah, no, whatever, that's fine. But obviously, like, Monkey Ball has nowhere near the status that OOT does. So it's like maybe a game that he would have got round to eventually, but like OOT probably would have been like on the priority list.
Yeah, so I don't know. Maybe I stopped him from doing the the video. Like, and by the way, like, I've thought about coming back. Like, this is kind of like on my bucket list. You know, if I had infinite time, I've wanted to remake the entire Ocarina of Time video, right? Remake it all from scratch and include all the new things up until the modern day now. But it's like such a monster video. It's like unfathomable. Like the amount of things in there. Like the original video was already an hour. There was things that I missed that I would want to include probably. That are probably even longer, it'd be more polished. And then there's like all other things that have been found. Crazy amounts of other things have been found within the last 10 years as well. It's like such a monster video. You know, I'm interested in it. But I wouldn't be surprised if he does that at some point, because that video is just outdated enough now anyway. You know, not to mention that it wasn't that great in the first place, because it was like the second video that I ever made, so it wasn't.
I mean, the whole section on TSA was brilliant. I don't think you could make it better than you already did.
But, you know, I do wonder. But I think, yeah, like it's but yeah, I mean, that's just me recalling the only interaction that I've ever really had with Summon Insult. And so I feel like, but I don't know, because it was so long ago. I don't remember. If I could go back and see the original messages, maybe I'd say, like, oh, I was kind of remembering that. But I seem to definitely remember that he was basically saying like he was a little bit, in the same way as I'm being a little bit protective of like my community, as like the Spyro community, and I feel a bit protective to if he's like going to encroach in it in some way, even if, you know, not in an intentionally malicious way. I think it kind of goes both ways, or at least maybe it did back then. Because like I say, I think I may have been the first person to copy his formula as well. So nowadays it's different. Now like everyone and their mum has done a world record video, whatever. But like back then, I think I might have been the first person to copy his formula. In which case, you can see how I think maybe back then it kind of goes both ways. I think he was a bit, in similar to how I'm being a bit protective of like the Spyro community or whatever. I think he was maybe being a bit protective of his, even just mentally, like of his concept back then. I don't think he would think that way now, because now it's like gone way beyond his control anyway. You know, back then it was just like his signature thing. Nobody else had copied it. Now everyone has, but you know, that's just my recollection. I mean,
I remember I don't remember like the exact wording, but I remember when Average Trey, yeah, I think that's his name, made the Sunshine record history videos, and I think at the very beginning of the Any Percent one, he like thanked Summoning Salt for almost like giving him permission to make the video or something.
Well, that's what I did.
Yeah, that's what I did too.
That's what I did in my video. Because the thing is, right, like in my video, I also added a little disclaimer at the beginning where I was like, oh, and thanks to Summon Insult for like giving me the thumbs up to go ahead with this video, right? And I think partially one of the reasons why I did that, like in retrospect, it's dumb. Like, okay, Summon Insult, he doesn't own, like, just because he made a world record history video, like, you know.
It's like the bloody Fine Brothers trying to copyright the word react.
Yeah, so basically that's kind of dumb, but also the reason why we did that. So like I say, so we got 3 people apparently. So me, Average Trey, and Jez here, apparently we've all done that. Like, I think so. We all did that, and I think because again, back at that time, there was almost an element of like, his viewers are gonna hate you if they don't think that you've got permission from him or something. I think that's what it was, because I think if you were to look at my Ocarina of Time video, and you were to look at the top comments, right? I'm pretty sure there's gonna be at least one comment there where it's like, oh, it's so great, you know, I was listening out to see if you got permission from someone in Salt, and when you said that you did in your intro, you know, I was happy to listen to it, or something like. There's comments like that. Like, there's comments from people that like upvoted people, where his viewers are basically indicating like, we wouldn't have been happy basically if you didn't have the fucking like permission from him type of thing, right?
I think the difference is like, someone in Salt is never going to get a comment from somebody saying like, oh, you're really taking advantage of the Spyro community here. He's never going to get a comment like that. The only difference is like, we see it from the point of view of like a YouTuber, and we know like the effort that goes into it. Whereas a YouTube viewer would just be like, oh, this is Summoning Salt's video.
Yeah, like I can sit there but again, none of this is his fault though. So none of this is like a personal attack on him. But it's just like, if I sat, like, I can sit there and spend forever, you know, making that Ocarina of Time world record history video, and pouring out my heart and soul and passion into it, and me being an actual person who's a member of that community, who's passionate about that community, right? And I'll get at minimum, I'll get a few comments that are saying like, crappy version of Summoning Salt, or like, you totally stole this from Summoning Salt. No, I haven't stole this. This is my fucking community, right? He's the guy, if anything, who's fucking stealing from other people by going to their community and taking all their shit and putting it into his video and his format, right? So it's like, he'll never get that criticism levied at him, except now by us. He will never get that criticism. So from my perspective, it's almost a bit of just like balancing the books here. Like, okay, I think all of us, I think you would, Jez, like, if you made your record history on Monkey Ball, I guarantee you got comments. Like, well, like you said, you got a comment of like, good job you got permission from someone in Salt, or like...
I actually got comments from people asking why I asked for permission.
Yeah.
More frequently than I got comments about actually like, oh, I'm glad that you asked first. People was like,
yeah.
Why did you do that?
Yeah. But I mean, my video had a bunch of people who were saying like, oh, I'm glad you got permission or something like that. And it's because, like I say, it's because mine was so early as well, that mine was in the range of time where like nobody else had copied the formula yet. So it's still like his signature formula that nobody else had copied. But there is an element of being annoyed. But I still think that even to this day, people making those type of videos will get comment. You're a rip-off Summoning Salt, or you've stolen Summoning Salt's ideas, or something insinuating something like that. And like, I've obviously had comments like that before. And it's like, dude, I'm not stealing from Summoning Salt by making a fucking video on the history of Ocarina of Time, the game that I actually fucking play. The game, if I'm stealing from Summoning Salt for that, well, he's stealing from everybody else by going around to all these other people's communities and taking their story that he isn't a part of, that he doesn't know about, you know, from a game he doesn't play. Like, if you basically, I'm basically just trying to like give some counterbalance to, you know, any YouTuber who has to deal with, you know, annoying comments like about how you're stealing from someone in Salt or whatever. Well, it's like, if you're gonna or we're a discount budget someone in Salt, even though our videos like higher quality or have more passion in them than his does, you know, it's like, well, if you're going to levy that criticism towards us, because I think every speedrun YouTuber has had that to at least some extent, right? So it's like, to any speedrun YouTuber who's had that criticism, it's like, yeah, if you're going to levy that criticism against us, well, we can critique him on similar grounds. That's all I'm saying.
One thing I want to add is that I distinctly remember, so I made my Monkey Ball video in 2018, I think, which is like kind of early in the whole speedrun YouTube scene. Like, it was nothing like it is now. And I don't think it was that video, but some other video I made maybe later that year or the year after or something. Like, at the time I made my record progression video, I'd never even seen a Summoning Salt video. I just knew that he was the guy that made record progressions. The only one I'd seen was retros. And then another video I made later down the line that was just like an add-on or an update to the record progression. I got a comment from someone saying they were so sick and tired of people ripping off Summoning Soul's aesthetic. I was like, what the bloody hell are you on about, man? I've never even seen one of his videos. Unless by aesthetic they've meant just world record progression at all, but I don't know, that was kind of odd. I do want to circle back to Spyro for a second, because there were some criticisms about the Spyro video itself. First of all, about Katote, misgendering Katote, which just seemed like a genuine error. I don't think there was any malice intended there. Secondly was calling Twilight Harbour skip the biggest skip in the history of the game, which maybe Retro has an opinion on. And thirdly, this is kind of just from me personally, but I felt like he kind of glossed over Saboom's involvement with the game and his whole impact on the Spyro scene. I feel like he didn't paint Saboom as kind of the legend who I view him as. Maybe my judgment's clouded here, but I feel like he kind of shortchanged Saboom a little bit in the vid.
I can't really comment because I haven't watched the video properly, like I said. But I can imagine that is an example of the type of thing that, yeah, like he can't make a video really on Spyro, let's say, to the full quality that a good video producer who is a Spyro person could do, because like, dude, that type of thing, like, I don't know, like I say, I can't really comment because I haven't watched it. But to the extent that, yeah, like Saboom, anyone who knows about Spyro or PS1 in general knows like he is like this super legendary character. There's so much to him. There's so many clips of him, all these different eras and all that. That's why I've made a whole documentary just about him that's an hour long, right? But the point is, if he wasn't there at the time period witnessing all these things, and he's just figured out who Saboom is like a month ago, because like he just started researching it or whatever, right? So, well, yeah, he's not gonna, maybe he doesn't know like what are the best parts to emphasize, or what were really like the most emotional time periods that had significant, like, or just little things like that. Like maybe he doesn't know where to put the most emphasis. Maybe he doesn't feel the sense of like who had the biggest impact at a certain time or whatever. Like, you know what I mean? Like, because he just doesn't have the sense. He has to like retrospectively like figure out, like, as far as I know, he just figured out who Saboom is like yesterday.
Yeah,
right?
he dedicated more of the video to talking about the fact that Tuval doesn't pop off than he did like talking about Saboom's whole legacy.
Dude, I can just imagine it'd be like, and like Tuval gets the world record in something, and he's like, "But guys, you're not gonna believe this."
Mate, he showed like this scale. It was like this pop-off scale that had like Niftski at one end and then Tuval at the other.
Like, but guys, you're not gonna believe this. He's so humble that he didn't even pop off. It's like.
But there was one part, like the whole thing, I was like, he's really just kind of like glossing over like how good of a player that Saboom was.
Yeah, because to him,
it got to one point where it kind of, maybe he realised too late into writing the script, like, oh shit, maybe this Saboom guy was actually kind of like a big deal in the Spyro scene. Oh, but it's too late to do anything, so I'll just casually mention that like he swept every record in all 3 Spyro games or something.
Yeah, it's like, that's the thing though, like, I can't properly comment because I only skimmed the video. So it's like, I can't like fully stand behind anything I'm saying right now because I don't know for sure. But I can totally imagine, and I think this applies to all the this like ties in with all these critiques we were just making in general. Of like, let's say that someone in Soul gets a little document, from speedrun.com, the data that's on there, or just somebody, whatever. Like, he's got a little spreadsheet of all the world records in order, right? And it's like, well, what's the difference between, this guy called Surreal had the world record once, this guy called Crash 41596 had the world record once, this guy called Kato, and then this guy called like SSBM stuff. It's like, well, to him, it's just like a bunch of numbers. It's just like a bunch of names. Like, who is? It's just like, oh, okay, so we got 1702, and then this guy got 1657, and then it's like, it's just a bunch of numbers to him. It's just a bunch of numbers. It's just a bunch of names. He doesn't know who the people are. He doesn't know their personality. He wasn't there to watch the crazy grind that broke this guy down to tears or whatever when he went for it. Type of thing. He wasn't there when, like, in the chat when Saboom was doing like ridiculous like 48-hour streams of just like playing Spyro constantly to the point of like destroying his own mental health and physical health, like, and like seeing all the chat messages and all that. Like, he wasn't there, so he has to like retrospectively invent all this, like approximate it, but his approximation is going to be far off, so he doesn't know what to emphasize and what not. He doesn't know, like, okay, so who out of all these people, out of all these like 50 people who have had the world record, who was more epic, who had more, who was more important,
who was more epic,
like who was a more interesting character or whatever. Is it like Shit Muncher 72, or is it like he doesn't know. He doesn't know. It's just a bunch of names. So he has to like
the Deo Man was portrayed the best of anybody in that video. It's like as if Deo Man needs that. It's like anyone who's even like vaguely familiar with Spyro, they'll know one of two people: Deo Man or Shaboom.
I do want to quickly mention as well, like you said, he doesn't know what to properly emphasize. Like, it reminds me, because you also mentioned like that one guy basically just mentally destroying himself by grinding the game. It reminded me of the 16-star world record history that he made, and I did like that video. But I was there's a runner called Kano, a Japanese runner, and he literally had a 24/7 stream going. Like, obviously he'd sleep and stuff and occasionally like eat, but it was ridiculous the amount of time he's putting in the game every single day. And then there were times where he got very extreme. I swear there was one time where he's like hitting the controller on his head or something, but like he kept like, I don't know, like he did mention it in the video, but I feel like there was a severe lack of emphasis, especially because like I watched a lot of those streams. It's like, oh my god, he's on Pace, I gotta go click on the stream. But I always had him on another monitor like a lot of the time, and I don't know, there was, I feel like I was kind of disappointed by how he didn't emphasize like the actual like proper dedication that Kano had to getting the 16-star world record, and he finally did. But it was kind of just mentioned like, oh well, he never turned the stream off, and then he got world record. That was kind of how it went, and I don't know. I really feel like I really wanted like more emphasis on that because of how big of a deal that actually felt at the time to like watch him do that.
Well, that's the thing. I haven't watched that video either, but again, I'm intimately familiar with Mario 64. That's another one of my games, right? So I'm intimately familiar with Mario 64. That when Kano did that, so Kano, he called it the Stream Unlimited, where he streamed for like 3 or 4 months straight, where he never turned the stream off, where like he streamed himself sleeping and all that. He lives in Japan, obviously in some little Tokyo apartment where there's like no space. He had like this fold out bed that like Japanese have, where he like got rid of the bed to make space for him to play the game. Then when he goes to sleep, he like gets the bed out and all this. And like I remember once, again, I was watching all this as well. Like I was watching all this. So we would have both been watching these streams at the time. I remember that Kano, he had a time where his controller was too worn out, his stick or whatever. So like he filmed himself. He didn't want to end the stream or go off stream. So he took his phone out, switched the stream to his phone, like recorded himself getting on the bullet train in Tokyo to go to Akihabara, wherever it is, where they've got all the game stores. He like goes in, he buys like 10 controllers and like an N64 and all that, like, and all this, right? There was so much there with this Kano guy. Like Kano, he was for those few months, he was such like a legendary standout figure. There was so much going on with just that tale of just Kano, right? But to summon insult, so yeah, that was easily one of the most memorable moments, of Mario 16-star history for sure, when Kano came in. And it's like when Summon Insult is making his video, okay, well there was this guy and there was that guy and there was the other guy and there was this guy. It's like a bunch of names, so he doesn't know, like, how would he know really like what to emphasize, what stood out and what didn't mentally, because he wasn't there, so he wasn't watching. So like, how would he know? So that's a perfect example that you've, like, I'm glad that you've given that example, because I can perfectly see that. That was another thing where I was there for it, and that's like a very good example of the type of thing that I'm talking about. Very like he doesn't know what to emphasize. Like in my video, in my Ocarina of Time video, there's many things covered, but again, because I was there and I was paying attention, and even for the earlier things that before my time, I had already researched tons of them just out of my own interest before I even made the video. You know, it's like a lot of my video, quite a bit of my video, like a disproportionate amount of time in the video is spent on this rivalry of Joden versus Cosmo or Narcissa as they are now. So the whole because that was the big that was like a really defining moment, you know, of Ocarina of Time history. That's like the world records that were set during that time for various reasons were more legendary than like the world record that's just been set most recently by far, right? So I know what to emphasize. I know like where all the hype was, where the real storyline was, where like people were most emotionally invested. It's like a disproportionate amount of time of my video is dedicated to that, right? For example. But yeah, so I think just these are the type of things where, again, to the critiques that we're making about his social effect on the scene, this is how this is how that translates into his actual videos themselves, and how like he's just not necessarily, he will produce a good video that people will like, no doubt about that, but this is just the inherent limitations, you know, that he has with his approach as compared to like when me and Goober make a video.
And this is the thing, what Summoning Salt is best at is taking like topics that only nerds care about and making them appeal to normies, basically. So like the vast majority of his audience aren't going to give a toss about that. You know, he's only going to be criticised by people who know about the topic that he's talking about. So whether or not it matters to him, really, I don't know, because the vast majority of people who see it aren't going to see this as an issue because they don't know any better.
Yeah, I mean, I get what you're saying, especially because like even if you did have a bone to pick with him, like if you're a small guy, like nobody's gonna side with you anyway. I think if he wanted to do a video on TSSM, I would want to be heavily involved if possible. Like I'd want to get like in a group chat with him and like a few other people from the community and like properly emphasize things to him. I don't know if he would let me, but like, well, you're not gonna have any idea like what I'm on about. But like Mindy Skip, that I cannot and I'm not just like exaggerating it. That has to be one of the luckiest discoveries in all of speedrunning, because that it really is like that insane. I feel like that needs very, very heavy emphasis, and I don't know if it would get that.
Was it
like
to
that
do with like corrupting,
respect, you know?
To corrupting memory addresses, and it just so happened to perfectly line up.
Technically not perfectly.
Well, the fact that
like,
it doesn't crash the game.
Well, it does crash the game if your load count is bad. But that was
right,
part of
yeah,
how
okay.
it was so lucky to find it. Yeah,
I forgot the load counts were a factor in that.
Huh?
I forgot that load counts were a factor in getting that to work.
Yeah, it's because a lot of the time it doesn't matter with that type of thing. But it's because every 4 loads the game leaks memory every load, and every 4th load it leaks additional memory, but that offset is just enough for that trick to like not work every 4th load. But it was insane that it was discovered because Foggy found it. They just so happened to be testing something on like a SpongeBob pad that was not worth testing the tech on, because there were other pads to test it on, and it was a really inconvenient pad to test it on. They just so happened to like use the SpongeBob's upgraded ball move and like pause at the exact, well, like within like a second of like detonating it, because you have to detonate it, and then they tested the thing on the SpongeBob pad, which was fucking pointless, and then they just so happened to immediately warp to Knucklehead. And then just so happened to attempt driving into the pit when nobody would ever think to do that ever. And then it just so happened to be like not 4th load, and everything just worked out perfectly. Like it is seriously like one of the craziest fucking discoveries ever. And there are a lot of versions of the game that can't even do the tech anyway, or where like there's also a version where it's different entirely. So like Non-English versions of the game can't do it either, so it's just like there's loads of layers to it, and I would really want to emphasize to him, like, okay, like, Summoning Soul, bro, like, this is a really big deal, like, you gotta emphasize this. But again, I don't know if I'd get that luxury, or if he would message me about, like, oh, how does this work, how does that work, and then that would just be like the end of it.
Alright, there's one last thing I wanted to discuss before wrapping up the episode here, so I'm gonna post a picture in the chat. So these are two of the top Spyro runners mentioned in the Summoning Salt video. On the left we have Chris LBC. On the right we have Deo Man. Two former Spyro any percent world record holders. So the question is, whose hairline would you rather have out of the two?
I feel like, I don't know, a hat can cover a lot, right?
Wait,
so which one's which?
About factoring a hat into this personally.
Is the one on the right Deo Man?
Yeah, it's Deo Man on the right.
Yeah, I feel like if you put a hat on it, it looks mostly normal, whereas like with the other guy, I feel like you'd still be able to maybe tell there's something's going on.
So you'd pick Deo Man.
I refuse to answer this question. I think this should just be cut there.
We gotta go bald.
Well, I think that wraps up today's episode of the Blistering Pace Podcast. Thanks for joining me, my fellow host here.
Yeah.
And we'll see you in the next ep.